So I've called this presentation Creativity for the Rest of Us. So there will be in the audience tonight some people who are professional creative people. There'll be quite a few actually. Designers, architects, filmmakers, various different people. So this talk is not so much specifically about those people who are in creative professions, but it's about people who are thinking about when organisations are trying to do creative thinking. And I've got some experience on that which I'd kind of like to share with you. But even if you are a designer or a filmmaker or one of those things, I hope this will be useful because from time to time you're going to need to try to get people from organisations to be and think creatively. So maybe that'll give you some clues. So let me jump in. This slide is really just a very quick way of saying, blimey, creativity, that is a big subject, right? And clearly in 15 minutes I'm not going to cover an awful lot of it. And it's also worth thinking, there are lots of different forms and expressions of creativity, from kind of at the top, creativity in and around business. So Jeff Bezos of Amazon, Sergey Brin of Google, David Ogilvy, a kind of famous ad man. Right at the bottom, we've got artistic, creative people who are creating wonderful things for us to enjoy and share. It's a very big tent. I'm not going to try and do justice to all of it. I am thinking more at the top end of that spectrum. So I'm thinking about when we're trying to exercise or be creative in a business or commercial context. So what sorts of, what do we mean by creativity in this context? So there are really three types of kind of creativity or creative endeavour in a corporate business setting. And I've got them here. So invention is creating or coming up with entirely new things or methods. So making something that's never been made before. There's always one. It's nearly always my brother. Innovation. So that's taking existing things or methods and putting them into novel uses or novel contexts to create new value from them. And improvement, so making existing things better or processes better. So there's a kind of, if you accept that there's a kind of hold on, Tom moment in there, which is improvement, I'm saying, and I really firmly believe is a creative activity. And if you think about improvement, then yes, that's right. Pretty much everybody who's got a job is required at some point in their job to be creative. Harriet is here. Harriet, tell us what your job title is.
Accounts clerk.
Accounts clerk. So Harriet is the accounts clerk of my business. And I require Harriet to be creative because I require her to think about how can she improve the processes or the ways of working that we're working on. So she needs to be creative at certain points. Maybe not all the time, but that's a part of her skills that we need to have developed to have effect for our business. So if you've got a job, you've got to be creative. Which kind of leads you to this second point, which is, okay, so if we've all got to be creative at some point, how can we become better at that? If we've got to do it, we might as well do it well or to the best of our powers and abilities. So what do we need to do? I've got a model here of organisational creativity, which I picked out because it's kind of true and interesting, and also it's kind of short. There's only 3 things in it, so it's good. We could probably do a doctoral thesis on this, and I think this woman probably did. Teresa Amabile of Harvard Business School thought about organisational creativity. She's saying there are 3 components: expertise, creative thinking skills, and motivation. So those 3 things will come into play if you're trying to make creativity happen in business. And I'll cover them off. I'll actually cover them in reverse order. Motivation is a short point, really. So there are 2 sorts of motivation. Intrinsic motivation, that's leaning into a problem because you're interested in that problem. I like solving problems. I really we've got to do something and fix this thing that's wrong with our business, or we've got to find a way of improving that. That's intrinsic motivation. The motivation is coming from within you. Extrinsic motivation is, if we don't sell more widgets in Q4 this year, we're all going to get fired. So the motivation comes from without. It's a pressure that's put on. That form of motivation is much more common in a business setting, and it's definitely worth thinking. If you're trying to convene some sort of creative activity in a business, to think, well, hold on, I might be working with some people on this problem, what are their motivations, and understanding those people who have intrinsic versus extrinsic motivations is quite a useful thing to take a measure on before you get going. This is the slide that I'm least happy with of my whole deck, partly because it looks a bit like a boring slide, and partly because if this talk was an hour long, this is the one that I'd be unpacking in more detail. Creative thinking skills, so the things, the tools and the skills that you need to make, sort of make creative things happen in corporations and companies. And I've broken it out in two ways. So first of all, in some ways, it isn't actually, if you like, it's the skill of creating the right environment, the right place and time to allow creative activities to happen. So yeah, first point, space and time. People often underestimate the amount of time that they need, and often underestimate the influence that environment will have over how creative people are. So to think about that is important. Sponsorship is, again, in an organisational setting, really important. So who in your organisation is allowing this creative activity to happen? To what extent do they support it? Do they participate in it? And to what extent will they support the outcomes, the ideas, the stuff that comes out of this creative process, and actually do something about it? And in my work, I spend quite a lot of time working on those senior body people in the organisation to make sure that the creative activity that's happening has got their support and enthusiastic support. Understanding the problem space, so before you start to be creative, do you have enough information about the problem that you're trying to solve or the opportunity that you're trying to take advantage of? I'm going to talk a bit more about that later. And then homework. Sounds like a sort of silly little thing. If ever I'm trying to convene a creative activity in a company, I'll almost always set a homework task, partly because it starts the creative process before we all get in the room or into whatever context we're going to be working in. So that's good, and it gets the engine rolling, gets people thinking about the problem space and about what they're going to do to participate. The second reason is if whether people do or don't do their homework is a really, really good indicator of their motivation. So if you set us half-hour homework task before some sort of creative meeting or endeavour, 5 out of 6 people do that homework, you've got a good clue about them. One person doesn't, often the most senior person who must take part, then you've got an indication of their commitment to the activity, and second, you can kind of do something about it there and then. So actually in the process itself, guiding the journey, so moderation and having rules, so creative groups do need good moderation. And they need to know kind of what the safe rules are and the behaviours that need to be enforced in the room. So think about and lay down what those rules are going to be. Tools and games, of course, that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. So it's like little techniques, tools, sometimes game-like fun things that help people get into a different mindset and actually start to generate creative thinking. And obviously, Rod's going to talk about that in a second. Thinking in sprints. So instead of sitting down for a 4-hour meeting and saying we need to improve widget production in Q4, maybe break that problem up and say, let's think about the different stages of that process, or let's think about the different people who have resources that we need to get into that process, or let's think about different people who we are trying to sell those widgets to and what they need. So if you break the problem up into smaller parts, then you get an opportunity to enthusiastically and in quite quick sprints go for those ideas, and then later you can take a step back and put it all together. I think another really important thing to do while you're in that creative process is to turning ideas into concepts. So as ideas start to be generated, as people come up with bright ideas, ideas are almost sort of jigsaw parts. They're interesting little fragments of what might become a bigger idea for change or for a new product or whatever it is. So take the time to try to assemble those bits into something that starts to look like a concept. That's the start of the prototyping process. You start to sort of make an imaginary future, start to put it together. And then the last point, capture everything. Another sort of admin point, it looks like. But how many people have been to a meeting where you had some sort of creative endeavour and then nothing happened? nothing changed, nothing got made, there was no outcome. Often that's because we weren't recording in enough detail everything that came out so that we can later reflect on it, synthesize it, share it. So fastidious recording was really important. But I think when you think about creativity in organizations, it's also probably right to look at it in a sort of slightly more emotional way as well. So I've got 3 points to sort of recognize about what happens when you ask companies to be creative. The first point is, you will all be scared. It is the activity which creates the most fear in organizations is any creative process, because most of the time people in businesses are not required to be creative. In fact, they're often required to behave in exactly the opposite way, to appear to be rational and closing down, zeroing in on a perfect solution. So you will have a lot of anxious people if you're convening a creative process. You need to recognize that, and again, find some ways to diffuse that. The second point, again, I would emphasize is that at first, quantity beats quality hands down. That it's much more important to get momentum, to have lots of things flowing out, than to have one or two really great ideas that are fully discussed and thought through. So go for volume at first, quality comes later. And this one, this is rather apposite given what happened in the town yesterday. So this is one of Alan Partridge's most famous bad ideas. There's an old saw, of course, in creative thinking. There's no such, guys, in this room, there's no such thing as a bad idea. Well, that's clearly bollocks. Monkey tennis is a bad idea. And whenever I'm in a situation with Post-it notes, I almost always write monkey tennis and stick it on the wall, because it's a reminder that, to myself, that I'm probably going to have to come up with something better than that. But secondly, it's to allow us to all recognise not everything that goes on the wall here has to be brilliant. So I would say, of course there's such a thing as a bad idea, but back to this fear issue, but bad ideas, having a bad idea doesn't make you a bad person. So removing the stigma from having a crappy idea is one of the keys to a successful creative process. It doesn't matter. And to help with that, my last thought here is, in improvised comedy and theatre, there's one of the fundamental rules is about momentum. So whatever line anyone feeds you, whatever suggestion is made to you, yes, you don't argue it down. You pick it up and you say yes and this. So yes, I'm a tree, and now I'm blowing in the wind. No, I'm not intrigued, because that's not going to help the creative process. We have to allow everything to move. So bad ideas will happen, but let's just roll with that, and let's add another bad idea. Maybe two bads make a good. Who knows? The third point in this model of organizational creativity is about expertise. So I call it domain expertise. So like being a specialist in a particular subject. So domain expertise is really important for organizational creativity. Rod works for a big insurance company. If you want to innovate around life insurance, it's definitely going to help to have some people in the room who know a lot about life insurance, like how's it made, who buys it, what are the regulatory difficulties around that sector. So domain expertise is essential for creativity, but it's not the only thing you need. So you need to triangulate or complement that domain expertise with perspectives or expertise from different places. I want to illustrate that with a made-up quote. In fact, two made-up quotes. So the first is attributed to Henry Ford, who was in fact made up by someone in about 2001. There's no record of this Henry Ford ever saying this. In fact, there's no record of this quote any time before 2001. Trust me, I've spent more time than anyone should knowing about this quote. Because in my professional life, this quote is utterly offensive. Because what it's saying is, customers, they don't know what they want. They don't know what they want. There's no point in talking to customers about what they want because they don't know. If we're in the business of making up quotes, then I've got one for you. So if in 1900 I'd asked the American coach-making industry what they wanted, they'd have said a faster horse. They'd have said, look at that beautiful coach. And this is the bloody problem. The horses are too slow. They would have said that because their domain expertise would have did blind them to the reality of what actually the world was waiting for. The world was world was waiting for faster transformation, and I think customers would have been able to tell them that, but domain expertise in coach making would never arrive at the solution that we don't need coaches anymore. So, okay, what can you do about this? Yes, if creativity is going to be founded on insight and understanding of the problem that you're trying to solve, yes, you need domain experts. You are important to the process. If you know a lot about coaches or insurance or whatever it is, yes, we need you. But there are lots of other perspectives that it's useful to bring into your creative process. And sometimes that might be literally asking those people to be in a room with you when you start to think about something. Other times it's just getting out there beforehand and asking questions, intelligent questions of people with expertise from different domains. So yeah, customers, non-customers who absolutely hate you. Critics, people who are talking in the press. Children is a great sort of, why does the world work like that? People from the front line of that organisation who talk to customers and understand their problems every day, or experts from entirely different domains. That's often a reason why I'm asked into a room, because I'm not an expert in life insurance, I'm an expert in different things. So you're going to find it hard, for all the reasons to be creative as a group and be a creative activity in a company if you don't find a way of getting these other influences, other ideas and insights and perspectives into that process. That's it from me, I think. I've got 3 things I hope I have, 3 points I hope I've made. First of all, everybody who's got a job has to be creative. Sorry, even if you don't think that you will feel like you're a creative person. Jonathan, you're giggling. You, my friend.
No, it's just the way you're saying it. I agree with what you're saying.
Everyone who's required to be creative should have some tools and techniques that help them in creative thinking. That's going to help. If you're going to have to do it, you might as well learn how to do it well. And then the third point, you can't rely only on your own domain expertise. You need to bring in the views of other people, other points of view. That is it. I've got some. I won't go through these now. When we post this, you've got these lovely resources. These are things that I found useful in helping give me some of those tools and perspectives, skills. So if you're trying to continue the creative process, some of this might be useful. Or you can talk to me. That's how you can talk to me. Thank you very much. Any questions?